Hello, and thank you all for joining us tonight for the second annual Women Leading Change panel discussion. My name is Bree Dunn, and I'm the Vice President of the Ireland-Canada Chamber of Commerce, Vancouver. As is our practice in British Columbia, we begin by acknowledging the traditional territories where we live and work. I would like to acknowledge that we are situated on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I would also like to acknowledge that you are joining us today from many places, near and far, and acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands. The Ireland-Canada Chamber of Commerce Vancouver was founded in 2017. We are a non-for-profit organisation set up for three key functions: to promote networking opportunities for the Irish business community, to support trade development between Ireland and Canada, and to encourage entrepreneurship. We wouldn't be where we are today without the support of the Consulate of Ireland and the Emigrant Support Programme. We are delighted to be partnering with St. Bridget's Festival Vancouver to bring this event to you. This year in Vancouver, St. Bridget's Festival is welcoming guests from around the world for a week-long event featuring a series of remarkable and inspiring women from January 31st to February 2nd. If you haven't had a chance to attend one of their other events yet, please do check out bridgetfestivalvancouver.com for the remaining free events. As a board, we are dedicated to supporting and promoting gender equality. When the festival committee approached us about this partnership, we saw this as a great opportunity to celebrate a day that commends and applauds the strong women of Ireland. Seeing that through our Chamber of Commerce lens, we are excited to bring together this incredible panel of businesswomen with experiences from both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. And it's almost time to introduce our panel. But before I do, I have a few housekeeping notes. This event is being recorded and will be shared on the ICCC VAN and the St. Bridget's Festival websites and social media after the event. This is an open discussion, which will include various thoughts, experiences, and personal opinions that may differ from your own. We do insist that all comments and questions are respectful of this. Any gender labels or pronouns used tonight are in reference to all those who identify as such. I will be asking our panel a series of questions that have been submitted by you, our audience, during your registration. If you didn't submit a question, you can also feel free to submit one for our 10-minute Q&A session near the end of the event. To submit a question, please look for the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please do not submit questions using the chat function, as neither I nor the panelists will be watching that. We'll hold all of those questions until the allocated time near the end of the event. And be sure to include the panelist's name if it's directed at anyone in particular. We will get to as many of your questions as the time allows tonight. And don't forget, our panelists will also be attending the Kumo Space Networking after the panel discussion. Now, before I introduce our panelists, how about we get to know a little bit about our audience with a quick poll? Let's see where everyone is joining us from tonight. So we have beautiful BC, East Coast, the US, Ireland, the UK, and elsewhere. It's very late in Ireland, so we'll see how many stayed up for this. I'll give it just a couple more seconds to give everyone a chance to vote. Okay, we're going to close the poll now, and you'll soon see the answers appearing on your screen. Well, there we go, 97% from beautiful BC, and elsewhere we have about 3%. So welcome from elsewhere. And now we begin. I am so very pleased to be here to lead this discussion tonight. Our panelists are as engaging and thoughtful a group of women as you are likely to meet, and it is my great pleasure to welcome each of them to our digital stage tonight. First up, let me introduce Niamh Cunningham, who is the Chief Operating Officer and founding partner at Rival Technologies, a software company that enables their clients to connect and better understand their customers. Rival's top-tier clients include Kimberly-Clark, Viacom CBS, Heinz, Warner Brothers, the Canucks, and Nike, depending where you're from. Niamh has a degree in computer science from University College Dublin and a master's in international business management from Newcastle University in the UK. She spent the start of her career as a market researcher in Dublin. After relocating to Vancouver in 2008, she moved into a career in tech. Niamh is committed to helping more women build successful careers in the tech space. Thank you so much for joining us, Niamh.
Thanks for having me. Nice to be a part of this panel, and I'm very excited for the discussion ahead.
Glad to hear it. Next, please welcome Sligo-born Rachel Mokler, who is Vice President of Legal at Flatiron Construction. There, Rachel co-founded the Grassroots Diversity and Inclusion Growth Group, or DIG for short, to encourage greater diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Rachel was also the winner of the 2017 Canadian Bar Association's Deborah Van Ginkle QC Award for mentoring. The award recognises women lawyers who pledge their time to help other women navigate the ups and downs of the legal world. Rachel has been called to the bar in British Columbia, Wales, and England. Since moving to Vancouver in 2008, she has worked both in private practice and in-house with a focus on mining and construction projects based in Canada, US, and the UK. Rachel is also a volunteer director at Charlford House, a non-profit rehabilitation home in Burnaby for women recovering from drug and alcohol addiction. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Bree. Delighted to be here.
And last, but by no means least, we are joined by Joan Sheehan, Executive Vice President Global Sales with Stem Cell Technology. Recently recognized as one of the top 25 women leaders in biotechnology and winner of the 2018 Wendy McDonald Outstanding Mentor Award, Joan spent the early part of her career as a medical technologist, specializing in hematology and blood transfusion serology. After relocating to Vancouver in 1993, Joan joined Stem Cell Technologies as one of only 2 technical sales representatives. Since then, she has developed and amassed a large global sales force of over 200 individuals across 10 offices and built a number of different functions across the company. In her current leadership role, she manages a global team of over 300 highly trained scientific staff. Joan is also a board member of the Centre for the Commercialization of Regenerative Medicine in Toronto. Thank you for joining us tonight, Joan.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
And now you know our panel. We'll make sure you can see them very clearly. So we're going to remove our PowerPoint now for the duration of the discussion. Remember, if you have any questions for the panel, please submit them using the Q&A button. We'll then ask as many as possible of your questions submitted tonight at the end of the event, around 10 minutes, for about 10 minutes. So be sure to get your questions in early. Ladies, let's begin. I'm going to start with Niamh. Niamh, one of the questions submitted was, the pandemic is testing each and every person's resilience right now. If you could talk to your younger self at a key, uncomfortable growth time in your life or career, what advice would you give yourself?
That's a great question. And I often want to speak to my younger self and tell her to chill out and not be so hard on herself. But I would say if I had one key piece of advice, it would be to believe in yourself more and not to fear rejection. I think this isn't unique to women, but I believe that women suffer from it more than others. We often just have this inner critic and we listen to them too much and we need to drown them out. It's the fear of rejection that holds us back, and it's never personal. Honestly, I mean, the amount of times that I didn't go for a job, or I didn't speak up in a meeting, or I didn't say what was on my mind. And honestly, I wish now that I had just done it, because the fear of rejection just stunts our growth as a person, professionally, like all aspects of our life. And it keeps us rooted in our comfort zone. It's like, oh, but what if I fail? What if it doesn't go so well? It's just this constant voice of self-doubt. And we just need to be kinder to ourselves. And we need to accept that, yeah, you know what, I may fail. I may be rejected. It's not personal. I'm going to pick myself up and move on. And so at the end of the day, we have to be so careful not to hold ourselves back. It's really interesting because I have a daughter now, she's 20 months old, and just watching her learn to crawl and then learn to walk, and she would fall and she'd pick herself up again, she'd hurt herself, she'd fall again, she'd fall again, she'd fall again. I'd often look at her and think, how have you not given up already? I mean, honestly, if that was me trying to learn something, I would have given up by now. But if we all took that approach, we'd all still be crawling, So it's really important that we just don't take it personally. We don't fear rejection and we don't let it hold us back. That would be the advice I would give myself.
I definitely think that's something all of us can relate to, and we'll all be taking some key advice from your 20-month-old there.
Yeah.
Joan, obviously COVID is very much on everybody's mind at the moment. What do you predict will be the next big change in business in a post-COVID world?
That's a really big question, because we're sitting in a different position than any of us. We're all from home. We should be all having a glass of wine together someplace. So it's a really big question. And I think it's how we work is going to be the big change. And I see kind of three things happening. The first one is remote work, where people can source talent anywhere in the world. And actually, this was best articulated and made me aware of it was Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook. And the way he intends to set up Facebook is some teams will be remote, so they can be from anywhere in the world, and others will be office-based. Now, this will offer amazing opportunities for people, and even here in the lower mainland, where property is very expensive, and for people with families, and that where you could live remotely, like on the island, or if you're interested in skiing or the outdoors, you could live someplace more remote, or even someplace like Fernie, miles away, and still be a highly skilled person and contribute to a team. So I think that's one big change. And then aligned to that would be flexible work, which I think will be quite different. And with that, where are hours coming to, like we're all working from, not all, but a very high percentage of people are working from home, depending on the job. Obviously, if you're a surgeon, you're not working from home, but a lot of people are working from home, and there will be flexibility. But then when you think about that, everybody can't turn up in the office at the same time. Yep. But I think it will allow people flexibility. And again, for parents, I think this is going to be marvelous opportunity for how they live their lives and commute time, and you can cut it down. And the last one is technology. And this would probably, Niamh would be a better person to discuss this. But from the people, like I've talked to consultants that work in this space, a lot of companies, those that are not affected on the revenue end by COVID, so are using this as an opportunity to improve the technologies they use in their organizations. And this they will be more efficient. So I think they're the three big changes, and they come together in that we will definitely work in a different way. But what I've been trying to think about, and maybe it's because I'm a bit older than most people, is that it's the unexpected consequence. You know, I could sit back and say it's going to be marvelous for you. You know, you're going to be able to work remotely, and you're going to be all able to be flexible. And but there will be some unexpected consequences, and we need to think about that, because we're bedeviled by the fact that we can never find moderation. So it's going to go to an extreme. And one of the ones I was thinking was like business travel. When I traveled a lot, and when you go to Europe, then you could concentrate on Europe. But now, because we've all been used to attending every meeting, then are we going to expect to be at the meetings in Vancouver and traveling? So there'll be some unexpected consequences. And I think if we're deliberate in how we embrace the change, I think there's huge opportunities.
Thank you, Joan. I appreciate that. I'm going to ask our whole panel this next question. So I'll probably start with Rachel. Have you had to equip yourself with any particular skills during your career in order to change perceptions or deal with inequality? I'll start with Rachel.
Okay, thanks, Breed. I think, as you outlined in my bio, I've worked mainly in construction, mining, and also the legal fields, which for a large part of my career were primarily male dominated. And so with that, I think we can learn from men, just like they can learn from women. And one of the things that I think that men have traditionally done better than women that I've had to learn in my career is that you push yourself forward. So don't sit back, hope that because you're a great worker, that your work will be recognized. In a good organization, that would obviously happen, one would hope. But there's also an aspect that you need to ask for what you want. So ask for that promotion. Don't expect your management to know that that's what you want. They may have certain perceptions of where you're at in the company. They may have certain perceptions of what you want in terms of, you know, your family life. And so make your requests clear, ask for that promotion. Don't be reticent, which I think is traditionally an approach that females generally have more than men. So that would be sort of one key issue. And then the other is learning to manage up. which was a concept that I didn't really have, because I used to think, well, you're the CEO and I'm your servant and I'll do whatever you tell me to do. But really, when you get into a higher management level, there's a certain amount of managing up that you have to do, and learning how to balance that as part of an overall management team.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll move to Niamh next. Niamh, your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely second what Rachel is saying. You know, it's interesting. We read that article, all four of us last week, on that article in the Harvard Business Review, where it talks about how women are starting to outperform men in the university space, getting degrees, getting more educated, and yet still not performing in the workplace. And so it's oftentimes these very kind of rule-abiding, follow the, you know, proposed order of things isn't necessarily lending itself very well to women in the workplace. And it's because, as in general, being a bit of a rule breaker, being more assertive, as Rachel said, actually lends itself better to your career progression than just actually having all of the qualifications. It often comes down to actually being able to manage up, saying what you think, speaking up when you feel like you have something to say. And so it's interesting, because in these very male dominated industries in which I'm in and Rachel's in, and I guess to a certain extent Joan, you have to really just be assertive and be able to say what you think. And that is it's not unique to men, but it is certainly a characteristic that is, you know, prevalent in the males. And so I think as women, we need to do better to actually show up at the table and speak up and say what we think.
I used to have an old manager who used to say, the squeaky door gets the oil.
Yes.
So don't
He's right.
Speak up, essentially. Joan, have you anything to add?
I was brought up to believe that women were a bit wiser than men. And it was by my mother, who I grew up on a farm in the west of Ireland, but she always believed that, and it was still instilled into us. And I hope that I instilled that into my female colleagues, because we don't have the same kind of ego problems. And I would encourage people to also instill that in their daughters. And very interestingly, my niece, who grew up in England, but she was with a group of women from international, or they were from all over the world, and they were meeting. And they said that they came to the conclusion, and she's less than 30, that Irish women were generally, they ran the families, and that they had more power than women in other areas in the world. And I could really identify with that. So I think we should kind of instill that a bit in ourselves. And I never felt I had to kind of adjust myself, but maybe I was just fortunate that that was what was instilled in me. And I think it's true. You see all these Irish women that do good things, and we should feel very good about ourselves and pass it on to our daughters. And
well, you know, maybe that's a common trait, because my mum grew up on a farm in the west of Ireland. And Rachel, I guess you have your own story around that as well. Maybe that's what makes us such wise, powerful women.
But I still believe it. I see my male colleagues and I think, just let it go. You know, don't get your ego in the way. I kind of let it all go, and then you pick your battles, and there's nothing deliberate. And I think that definitely helps us.
My farming father will be very happy to hear that. Rachel, coming back to you, you've won an award for mentoring. What advice would you give to those wanting to be a mentor and to help support other women rising?
Yeah, I'll address that. I'll also tell Niamh about the summers I spent in the bog in the west of Ireland, on turf.
Happiest days of your life.
I have a few of those, and the least glorious part of my life, and I'm glad they're way behind me.
Turning to your question on mentoring, I think if you ask any successful woman how she got where she got to in her career, she will say that she worked hard, probably harder than her male counterparts for the most part, that there was an element of luck involved in her career. But then at some point along the way, a mentor reached out a hand and helped to pull her up a rung of the ladder, or held on to her hand when she was going to jump off the ladder because things were getting too tough. And so I've been very lucky in my career. I've had some great mentors, both male and female. And so I got to a point in my career where I wanted to give back by mentoring. and I did that via the Law Society. But when I did that, and this is what I want to sort of explain to mentors or potential mentors, is I was doing it thinking that I was giving back and sort of how great I was to be giving back. But what I didn't appreciate was how much I got from the experience. It's incredibly rewarding to have a mentee who might be struggling in their career, and to think that you may have played a small part in then getting them to thrive in their career. And so I'd encourage everyone who's got the time to make the time to be a mentor. And it doesn't have to be a formal process, which it's quite a formal process in the Law Society, but it can just be as informal as meeting up with someone, having a Zoom call once a month, post-COVID, having a coffee or a glass of wine, and just being a listener and someone who's there so they have a feeling of a sense of support in their career at a time when they feel they need that.
Thank you, Rachel. And Joan, I'm gonna, as a follow-up to that, as another award-winning mentor, would you have any advice for a mentee on how they would go about finding a mentor?
Actually, the best advice, I read this, I think it was in Jill Sandberg's book, Lean In. And she said, if you want somebody to mentor you, you should make yourself useful or help them in some way. And I thought it was really good advice, because lots of people are busy. And when I look back on it, the people that mentored me, who like say, okay, I'll help you with that. And then you learn from them and you build up this great relationship of trust. And I think that's the way, think about, and then it's more of a mutual relationship rather than one of giving. And I think that is a way that works very well. And people that I have mentored a lot are normally people that I work along with, or we're working on some project. And then, you pick out the things they're really good at and you give them feedback and they appreciate it and they help you. And it becomes a very good relationship. And there's other people I have mentored on a more formal way, but it doesn't work as well, I think, as more when it's more natural and less formal. I think it is. And as Rachel said, it can be mutually very, very beneficial, and it's more fun when it's done in an informal way.
Thank you, Joan. I appreciate that. Niamh, I'm going to come to you as the mother on the panel. Do you believe more should be done to support the career progression of women who take time out of the office for maternity leave?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that generally as a society we need to do a better job of. I mean, we haven't been trying it for very long. I mean, as late as the late 70s in Ireland, women who had babies weren't even allowed to go back to work. So we really only have about 30 or 40 years even in practice doing it. And in that time, we've come a long way. I mean, my company in particular, I feel very lucky. I came back to my exact same position. They even paid me maternity leave when I was off. I know that not everyone has that same advantage. I would encourage companies to do one of two things, though. I would definitely encourage them to consider that it should be really more of a joint responsibility. Like, it's not all on women to have to take the burden of the childcare. And I've noticed that more and more companies, particularly in the tech space, are actually offering paternity leave. And my company does that as well. And it just means that, men are also able to take the time off, and then maybe women can go back a little earlier than they may have otherwise if they were solely responsible for the kids at home. So that's an interesting kind of new angle that's come in the last 5 years, is companies looking at, well, if we offer maternity leave, then we should offer paid paternity leave too. And it kind of evens the power balance there. So that's one thing, definitely. More so, honestly, than businesses. And I feel they're doing a really good job of it, or trying to do a good job of it, just to be competitive. They have to. I feel the government needs to do a better job. Like, something that really struck me was just, we have, I'm very lucky because I happen to do a nanny share with a friend of mine. So my little daughter and her buddy they get minded together and it all goes really well. But I pay full tax on my income, and then that income I pay the childcare. Like, there should be tax relief on that, And also we do a nanny share because there is no daycare or childcare facilities. So I feel as if the government needs to step up and do a better job. And it's not just a female problem, like, it's a male problem, it's a community problem. We need to make it more of a problem that crosses the whole cross section of society. And I see so many women not being able to justify going back to work because, you know, they might only come out with an extra $100 by the time they've paid for childcare. And that's a disservice to the economy in general, because then women take a step back from their careers and they select themselves out for a few years from promotions. And so their career, you know, doesn't progress as it would otherwise. So I feel like it has to become more of a community problem, is essentially the main thing that I have decided since coming back and seeing how difficult it is just to get childcare.
I think a lot of people probably agree with you on that one as well, Niamh. Rachel, as you work in a predominantly male-dominated industry, do you have any advice to the men in the room or the digital room in terms of being an ally for diversity and inclusion?
Sure. Also, maybe even not for the men in the room, but also for the women that work with men. I think primarily my view is that the diversity inclusion movement cannot succeed in a company without the buy-in of men. And some of the biggest male advocates that I found are, you know, middle-aged men that have daughters that are growing up and they think they're amazing, and they want those daughters to have the same opportunities as the sons. So I think there's a real opportunity there now to gain some momentum in terms of diversity and inclusion in companies. So when I started at Flatiron and we started this, what we call the DIG, because we're, you know, in construction and cool, the DIG group, in 2018, I was talking to one of my male colleagues and he said to me, you know, Rachel, I think this is absolutely fantastic that you have started this women's group. You know, I'm all for it. I'm all in. You know, what I'd like you to do is to help me out with this problem that I have with a girl in one of my meetings. She's in one of my teams. What I'd like you to do with this women's group is to give her training, because I find, you know, I know she's great, but she doesn't speak up in my meetings. And so what I said to him is, you're not getting it. You need the training as well as she needs the training. Is she being asked to give her opinion in the meeting? Is she being interrupted when she talks? Is she too busy taking the notes for the meeting that she can't then also be asking the questions, because it's quite hard to do that in a meeting? And so what we need to do here is you have to have training on unconscious bias, inclusive meetings, inclusive leadership. And she probably needs training in terms of building confidence, stepping forward and feeling comfortable in that environment to state her opinion. And so he digested that information and moved forward with it. Some other things that we have done is unconscious bias training with the management, with the leadership, which when you're dealing with a group of men in a construction company, they do look at you as if you're mad when you suggest that. But the thing is, they all did it and they really learned something from it. And now they're quite into it because it is actually, you know, quite technical in nature. So it appears to an engineer that there's sort of logic behind it. And one final thing that that I'm going to talk about is that we asked our male colleagues to just watch a 5-minute video, which really talked about women's experience in certain environments, and then talk to a female colleague about that video. Like both watch the video and then it's only 5 minutes, and then have a conversation about it and just get your views. And that was very eye-opening for a lot of the men in our company to just understand the different perspective, because I think it's pretty hard. We have to acknowledge that if you're coming from the majority, it's very hard to understand the minority's point of view because you've never actually experienced it. So, you know, there has to be a level of information flow between both groups to move the movement forward.
Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate that that insight, and from your own personal experience as well. It's definitely appreciated. I have a question for the whole panel next, but before I do, I just wanted to let our audience know that this is going to be our last question before we open it up to the questions and answer session. So do make sure that you submit some questions. If you have any questions for our panel, you can submit more than one if you like. And now is your chance to do that, because this is our last question before we move to the Q&A panel. So speaking to the whole panel again, and I'll start with Joan. How do you feel about mandating change, such as like quotas on boards, etc., to enable diversity and inclusion?
That's a little bit tricky, but I think it depends on the industry you're in. And if there is, for example, a board and they have never had a woman or they have never had somebody from, then I think there should be a very deliberate decision to diversify the board. So I think it depends on a case-by-case basis, and I wouldn't come down black and white that it's one or the other. And I do think that's one area where there is, we'll say a lot of people that are on boards are older and that pipeline isn't there. So I think from the point of view of women, that will be there in a few years' time. But I think for other diversification, diverse groups, I think you need to make a deliberate decision, and you should, but not, you can't, and the individual, the institution has to decide, or the company, or whatever it is we're going to have. So in some cases, yes, but I wouldn't mandate it right across the board.
Okay. Niamh, can I get your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I do definitely hear what Joan's saying in terms of, you are selecting from a very limited talent pool. So you don't want to have people who are completely unqualified and inexperienced for the role just for the sake of diversity. However, having said that, I do think that we have to sometimes oversteer the train to get it back on the tracks. And in Norway in the late 70s, they had a policy of equal discrimination where they said there had to be an equal number of men and women in leadership teams. And at the time, that seemed like a crazy idea, and there's not enough women who are experienced and what have you. And then flash forward 40 years, there's an equal pool of women to choose from as there are for men because of this, what seemed like quite an extreme policy at the time. And so sometimes we do just actually have to make these very bold statements, and we have to really take these leap of faiths in the hopes that we will improve it for the future generations. So yeah, it's a difficult one because you also don't want to have people on the boards who aren't experienced, but it's an interesting concept because if you think about it, we often think, okay, everyone on the board has to have 15 years in that field and they have to have, been accomplished in X, Y, and Z, but sometimes you actually just need another perspective. You just need to have a different voice in the mix that's balancing out these very strong voices. So I personally think that I think it's a positive thing if done correctly.
Thank you. Rachel, any final words on that?
I would just say that I think at least companies should be forced to make a conscious effort in ensuring that their pool of recruiting to the board is equal and that they're seeing a broader spectrum of candidates for a role. And then also that the hiring panel for the board is diverse, because there's, lots of research out there that you tend to hire or like people like yourself. And so you've got to sort of, I think if you address the recruiting aspect of it and also the hiring board, that would help move things along.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to move to our Q&A session now. So thank you to everybody who submitted questions, and I can still see some are popping in here at the moment. So we'll get to as many as we can in the next 10 minutes. So we are running a little bit over on time, so we'll try and keep our answers short as well if we can, panelists. Rachel, just a clarification question from Julie. Rachel, can you give a little bit more information as to what you mean by manage up, please?
So what I mean by that is a relationship with your manager is a two-way street. It shouldn't be sort of dictator and servant. It needs to be a relationship that you manage. So you have to manage their expectations in terms of performance or activities. And so not to necessarily just do everything that they're saying, but question it and then, have a productive conversation between the two of you. And that's part of, a fun relationship too. But that's, I think, part of growth as a manager, and the more senior you get into an organization, that's part of what I've learned.
Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate that. A question from Annabelle now, and if any one of our panelists wants to take this, just let me know. Striving for success and change often takes a lot to do, and other elements of your life can suffer. If you could give one brief piece of advice on how to succeed in your career whilst also building a full balanced life and, you know, have it all, what would that piece of advice be? Is there any of our panelists that would like to take that one? Niamh, we'll do Niamh and Joan on this one. Go ahead.
I am a massive proponent of work-life balance. And I think that no employer benefits from a burnt out employee. And you actually have to be quite ruthless in the pursuit of this. You know, there's only so many hours in a day that you can actually truly apply yourself and actually do good work. And I definitely believe that you need to work smart and not hard. And there will be times where you need to really crank and pull in all the hours in the day that you can to get something over the line, but it's not sustainable. And so you actually, to Rachel's previous comment, you need to do a good job of managing up. If you find you've 10, 12, 14 hours of work a day, then you are not managing your boss properly and telling them that, okay, I love these 15 things you want me to do. What are the top priorities? And a boss is going to just keep piling on more work if you just keep delivering. And so it really is a multitude of things. It's one, being really committed to the fact that your mental and physical health is just as important as your professional life. And secondly, it's managing your boss and those around you so that you actually are producing good work and you're not burning out. And so my whole career have always made time for that. So I think it's really important that everybody makes a conscious effort to do it, because it's not just going to happen for a lot of people naturally.
Thank you, Niamh. Joan, I'll move to you briefly on that.
Okay, I think the most important thing is your partner in life. If you are left trying to run a career and a family and you don't have the right support or the right partner, then I think that's the single most important thing. And then the second would be the boss, your boss. You know, if you don't have a boss that understands you have limitations and you need to live a life, then you need to get a new boss. So they would be the two things. Choose those people well.
Wisely. Nice. Got some good advice there, Joan. Thank you very much. I'm going to take one more question here. I'm going to take a brief answer from everybody. From John, which country, Ireland versus Canada, is demonstrating more leadership by women, so steering national health policy in the pandemic? What do you think?
My sister's a doctor. I'm going to say Canada. BC.
Yeah. Okay. Niamh or Joan, do either of you want to weigh in on that?
Well, I don't think we can really hold up Ireland as a glowing example of how to handle COVID at the moment. So I feel, unfortunately, it's a slam dunk for Canada. And Bonnie Henry, for the most part, has been doing a very diligent, conscientious job. But I mean, it's a difficult thing. And I mean, it's very different being like Ireland, a country that is so dependent on EU and the movement of people in and out of the country. And like our economy on its own is small compared to Canada. So I feel like it's not an apples for apples comparison.
But most of the medical officers in the different provinces in Canada are female. So I think the women are running the show here when it comes to pandemic.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that question from all of our audience. I really appreciate you submitting it. I'm sorry, there's more still popping up and I'm sorry I can't get to them all, but do remember that our panelists and everybody else will be attending at Kumo Space after this as well. So that is the last of our questions and the time has flown by so incredibly quickly. We will be moving over to our Kumo Space networking shortly, but before we do, I would like to share some important notices. So please do stay with us for a few more moments. Firstly, a huge thank you to our incredible panel. We truly appreciate your time and for sharing your personal experiences here tonight. So thank you very much. As a thank you, we have made a donation on your behalf to the Irish Benevolent Society of BC, whose main purpose is to provide emergency assistance to families and individuals in the Irish community. If any of our audience wishes to make a donation as well for this free event, please do feel free as well. And you can find the details on the St. Bridget's Festival Vancouver website as well. Huge thank you again to Joan, Niamh and to Rachel. This is where the applause would normally come in a real setting, so it's weird not to have that. So next, I would like to thank the Ireland Canada Chamber of Commerce Vancouver's patron sponsors who provide in-kind sponsorship to the Chamber. So if anybody else, any of our businesses here tonight are interested in being a sponsor in the future, please do feel free to reach out. Also, a big thank you to all of my fellow volunteer board members tonight for all of the work that they do behind the scenes. Sadly, I won't get to work with them for much longer, as I will actually be finishing up with the Chamber soon to venture back home to the homeland, back to Ireland in March. So I'll finish my term as Vice President at the end of June, but my other role as Director of Events with the Chamber is actually available immediately to help plan our upcoming events in April and June. So if anyone is interested, I'll be in the Kumo Space rooms after this event if you want to pick my brain, see if it's something you're interested in, or check out our website, ICCC VAN, so Ireland Canada Chamber of Commerce Vancouver, .ca for the role description and how to apply. And do feel free to reach out to me after this if you have any questions around it as well. Speaking of our website, we are currently busy creating a new website, which will bring some new members only features and resources. We hope to have it completed by about March. So do stay tuned to our channels for all the announcements. If you aren't already a member and would like to join the Chamber for the very reasonable fee of just $50, please check out our current website. A huge thank you also to the Consulate General for their support, and the incredible St. Bridget's Festival Committee who have been working tirelessly to put together an inspirational schedule events this week. Special shout out to Mary and Kathy, who you'll see their names floating around if they're, I think Mary's comes up as Bridget's Festival, who've been managing all the technical aspects tonight and in all the run up to the event. Thank you so much for all of your time and everything. And finally, a big thank you to you, our audience tonight. We'd over 100 people register for tonight's event. So it's a strange feeling not being able to see you as I talk to the screen right now. So I am looking forward to seeing your lovely faces over on Kumo Space in just a few moments.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to step in very quickly here. I'd like to, as President of the Ireland Canada Chamber of Commerce, I wanted to just thank all the panelists, our superb MC, Breed Dunn, and everyone who's involved in making it possible. As Breed touched on, she's going to be leaving us next month. So I just wanted to step in and thank her for her outstanding contribution over the past 2 years. Breed joined us as Director of Events, but her leadership skills became very clear. And she quickly adopted a VP role, and she's been a driving force behind the Chamber in the past 2 years. So we'll be gifting Breed a special gift to remind her of Vancouver and acknowledge her contribution to the Chamber. So we wish Breed the best of luck in her return to Ireland, and she'll be sorely missed. So we'll miss you, Breed.
Thank you so much.
I hope to see you all in Kumo Space afterwards for some networking. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, Rory. Thank you very much. Wasn't expecting you to pop up there. And that concludes the Zoom part of the event. Kathy, I believe, is just about to post the Kumo Space link in the chat in case you need it, but it's also in the email that you received with the Zoom link. So have a look. It's near the bottom of that email. You'll find where you can click and come through to the Kumo Space rooms. And there's 4 different rooms. You can come in and out of the various different rooms. Each one is named after a province in Ireland. So you'll be greeted by a member of the board at each door. So if you need any guidance around the rooms, do feel free to ask them as well. I hope to see you all there. Thank you again, everybody. We'll see you there.